The small cafe at the corner of Elm Street had always been our go-to spot for quiet Sunday mornings. The place had an old-world charm, with wooden tables slightly worn from years of coffee cups and conversations, and large windows that let in the soft, golden light of the early sun. I sat across from Laura, my wife, sipping my cappuccino as she scrolled through her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You okay?" I asked, my voice tinged with casual curiosity. Laura had been unusually distant lately, her attention often swallowed by that tiny screen. She glanced up, her blue eyes meeting mine briefly before darting back to her phone. "Yeah, just work stuff," she replied with a forced smile, her fingers tapping away at the screen. "You know how it is." I nodded, though I wasn't entirely convinced. Laura was a financial analyst, and work could be demanding, but something felt different. There was a tension in her that I couldn't quite put my finger on, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I took another sip of my coffee, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, when I noticed her phone light up with a new message. Instinctively, my eyes flicked to the screen just before she quickly turned it face down on the table. But it was too late, I'd already seen the name. David. It was my father's name. For a moment, I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. It had to be a coincidence, I told myself. David was a common name, and there was no reason to jump to conclusions. Still, something about the way Laura had quickly hidden the phone gnawed at me. "Who's David?" I asked casually, keeping my tone light, even as my pulse quickened. Laura's eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and she hesitated for just a fraction of a second too long before answering. "Oh, just a client. We're discussing some financial strategies." Her explanation was plausible, but the way she avoided my gaze and the sudden flush in her cheeks didn't match the nonchalance in her voice. I felt the first tendrils of suspicion curl around my thoughts. "Must be an important client," I said, my eyes narrowing slightly. "You seem to be texting him a lot these days." Laura forced a laugh, tucking a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. "Yeah, well, some clients need more attention than others," she said, her tone dismissive. "You know how it is." But I didn't. Not really. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. We made small talk, but the easy rhythm we usually shared was gone. Laura's smiles were strained, and her laughter lacked its usual warmth. Every time her phone buzzed, she would glance at it with a flicker of anxiety before tucking it away again, as if she were afraid of what I might see. I tried to push the thoughts from my mind, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the unease lingered, growing with each passing moment. Later that afternoon, I dropped Laura off at home and made an excuse about needing to run some errands. She seemed relieved to have the house to herself, and that only fueled my suspicion. I drove around aimlessly for a while, my mind racing, before finally deciding to swing by my mother's house. Mom was away for the month, spending time at a sanatorium upstate to recharge. She'd left me the keys, asking me to check in on the place occasionally. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked out front. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the house, dread pooling in my stomach. The front door was slightly ajar. Every instinct in me screamed to turn back, to leave it alone, but I couldn't. I had to know. I pushed the door open silently and stepped inside. The house was quiet, the only sound the faint creak of the floorboards under my feet. I moved through the hallway, my breath shallow, until I reached the living room. And then I saw them. Laura, my Laura, half naked and straddling a man who was buried between her thighs. Her back was to me, but I could see the shock of grey in the man's hair, the same grey that peppered my father's hair. My world shattered. I froze, rooted to the spot, unable to believe what I was seeing. It was like a nightmare, one I desperately wanted to wake up from, but the scene in front of me was all too real. The man, my father, groaned beneath her, completely oblivious to my presence. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless, and for a moment, I thought I might vomit. But then something else took over. A cold, simmering rage that pushed aside the pain and disbelief. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I stepped back, my movement slow and deliberate, my mind already plotting. I knew I had to act, but not here, not now. Laura had cheated on me, and with my father, no less. The very thought was a knife twisting in my chest. But this wasn't just about her infidelity, it was about the utter betrayal from two people I trusted most in the world. I turned on my heel and left the house as quietly as I had entered, my mind a whirl of dark thoughts. Laura and my father didn't hear me leave. They had no idea that I had seen them, that I knew their dirty secret. But they would. Oh, they would. I got into my car and drove off, my grip tight on the steering wheel. My thoughts were already racing ahead, planning, calculating. Laura and my father had made their move. Now it was my turn. They had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to the brink, and they had pushed me too far. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I wasn't going to let them destroy my life and walk away unscathed. I would make them pay for what they'd done. As I drove, the rage within me grew, hardening into a cold resolve. Laura thought she could betray me and keep it hidden. She thought she could play me for a fool. But she was wrong. She had no idea what was coming. And when I was done with her, she'd regret the day she ever crossed me. I drive in a daze, the engine's hum barely registering over the storm of thoughts raging in my head. The sun dips low, casting long shadows over the quiet suburban streets, but I barely notice. All I can see is Laura, her body tangled with my father's, and the raw betrayal in that image sears into my mind. I pull up to my friend Adam's house, a modest bungalow on the other side of town. Adam and I have been friends since college, and he's the kind of guy who always has my back, no matter what. I need someone to talk to, someone who can help me think straight. I knock on the door, and within moments, Adam answers, a beer in hand and a surprised smile on his face. "Hey, man. What brings you here?" "I need to talk," I say, my voice tight. I push past him into the living room without waiting for an invitation. Adam's smile fades as he follows me inside. He sets the beer down on the coffee table and studies me with concern. "What's going on, Mark? You look like you've seen a ghost." I sit heavily on the couch, running a hand through my hair. "It's bad, Adam. Really bad." He sits across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Tell me." I take a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Laura, she's cheating on me." Adam's eyebrows shoot up in surprise. "What? Are you sure? How do you know?" "I caught them," I say, my voice barely above a whisper. "At my mother's house. With my father." Adam's eyes widen in shock. He opens his mouth to speak, then closes it again, at a loss for words. Finally, he manages, "Holy shit, Mark. Are you serious?" I nod, the bitter truth choking me. "I saw them, Adam. I saw everything." "Jesus Christ," he mutters, rubbing his face with both hands. I don't even know what to say. That's insane." "Yeah, it is," I reply, my tone dark. "And I'm not going to let them get away with it." Adam looks at me, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" I lean forward, my voice low and cold. "I'm going to make them pay, Adam. They think they can do this to me, to our family, and just walk away? I'm going to ruin their lives. Both of them." Adam studies me carefully, his expression a mix of concern and caution. "Mark, I get that you're angry, and you have every right to be. But you need to think this through. Revenge, it's not going to make you feel better in the long run." I glare at him, the rage simmering just beneath the surface. "You don't understand, Adam. This isn't just some fling. This is my wife and my father. They've destroyed everything. I can't just let it slide." "I'm not saying you should," Adam says, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "But you need to be smart about this. Don't do something you'll regret later." "I won't regret it," I say, my voice firm. They deserve everything that's coming to them. Adam sighs, knowing that there's no reasoning with me right now. Okay, man. I'm with you. Whatever you need. I nod, appreciating his loyalty. I need to figure out my next move. I can't go home. Not yet. Adam nods slowly. You can stay here as long as you need to. We'll figure this out together. Thanks, I say, though my mind is already elsewhere, plotting, scheming. There's something else I need to do first. Adam raises an eyebrow. What's that? I need to talk to someone, I say, standing up. Someone who might know what the hell is going on. Who? Adam asks, following me to the door. I hesitate for a moment before answering. My father's lawyer, John. He's been handling my parents' affairs for years. If anyone knows what my father's been up to, it's him. Adam frowns, but he doesn't argue. All right, man. Just be careful. I will, I say, already halfway out the door. John's office is in a sleek, modern building downtown, all glass and steel, with a lobby that reeks of wealth and power. I make my way to the elevator, my pulse quickening with every step. My father has always been a careful man, meticulous with his secrets, but John has known him for decades. If anyone can give me the answers I need, it's him. The receptionist gives me a polite smile as I approach. Do you have an appointment, sir? I need to see John Mason, I say, my tone leaving no room for negotiation. It's urgent. She hesitates, clearly taken aback by my intensity, but nods. Let me check if he's available. I wait, pacing the length of the waiting area, my nerves on edge. Finally, the receptionist looks up from her desk. Mr. Mason will see you now. I stride into John's office, not bothering to knock. He's sitting behind a large mahogany desk, his grey hair perfectly combed, his suit immaculate. He looks up as I enter, his eyes narrowing slightly in surprise. Mark, he says, his voice measured. I wasn't expecting you. What brings you here? I close the door behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. I need answers, John. And I need them now. John leans back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Answers about what? My father, I say, my voice hard. And Laura. For the briefest moment, I see a flicker of something in John's eyes, recognition, perhaps, but it's gone just as quickly. He sighs and gestures to the chair across from him. Sit down, Mark. I remain standing. Just tell me the truth, John. How long has this been going on? John studies me for a long moment before finally speaking. I'm not sure what you're asking, Mark. I slam my fist on his desk, making him flinch. Don't play games with me, John. How long has my father been screwing my wife? John's expression tightens, and he stands up slowly, walking around the desk to stand in front of me. Mark, you need to calm down. This isn't the place for this conversation. Then where is? I snap, my hands clenched into fists. Because I'm done being in the dark. I want the truth, and I want it now. John sighs again, his shoulders slumping slightly. Mark, your father, he's been involved in things you don't understand. Things that go beyond just an affair. I stare at him, my anger momentarily overshadowed by confusion. What the hell are you talking about? Your father, he's been making some dangerous choices, John says carefully, choosing his words with precision. And Laura, she's a part of that. But it's not what you think. What do you mean, not what I think? I ask, my mind reeling. Mark, there are forces at play here that you're not aware of, John says, his voice low and serious. Your father has been involved in some very risky business deals that have put him, and anyone close to him, in danger. I shake my head, trying to make sense of what he's saying. What kind of deals? John hesitates, glancing at the door as if expecting someone to walk in. I can't go into detail here. It's too risky. But what I can tell you is that your father isn't the man you think he is. He's been hiding things from you, from your family, for a long time. I feel the ground shift beneath me, the solid reality of my life crumbling into uncertainty. Why would Laura be involved in any of this? John meets my gaze, his expression grave. I don't know all the details, but it's possible she got caught up in something she didn't fully understand. Or maybe she's deeper in this than we realize. The implications of his words hang heavy in the air, and I feel a cold dread creeping up my spine. So what do? I ask, my voice barely more than a whisper. John places a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm. You need to be careful, Mark. You need to play this smart. Don't do anything rash. There are people watching, people who won't hesitate to hurt you or anyone else involved if you step out of line. I swallow hard, the weight of his warning pressing down on me. How do I protect myself? John looks at me with a mixture of pity and resolve. Stay close to those you trust. And if you can, distance yourself from your father and Laura. But most importantly, keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. The more you know, the more dangerous it gets. I nod slowly, the enormity of the situation beginning to sink in. My life, once so simple, is unraveling into a web of deceit and danger that I never could have imagined. And now, I'm caught in the middle of it, with no clear way out. As I leave John's office, his final words echo in my mind, "Be careful, Mark. You're in deeper than you realize." And with that, I step out into the night, the darkness of the city swallowing me whole as I realize just how far this goes, and how much I stand to lose. The night is thick with tension as I drive back to Adam's house, John's warning ringing in my ears. I'm no closer to understanding what's really happening, and the gnawing uncertainty is eating me alive. My father, the man who taught me everything I know, is involved in something dangerous, something that has dragged my wife down with him. The betrayal, the lies, they all swirl together, making it impossible to think straight. As I pull up to Adam's house, I see his silhouette pacing inside the living room. He's waiting for me, probably worried after seeing me so unhinged earlier. I kill the engine and sit in the car for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts, but my mind is a storm of anger and confusion. I finally force myself out of the car and head inside. The door creaks open, and Adam immediately looks up, relief and concern mingling in his expression. "Mark, you're back." "How did it go?" he asks, his voice careful, as if he's afraid of setting me off. I close the door behind me and lean against it, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "John wasn't much help," I say, my voice flat. "He gave me some cryptic bullshit about my father being involved in risky business deals and Laura being caught up in it. But he wouldn't tell me anything specific." Adam frowns, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Risky business deals? What the hell does that even mean?" "I don't know," I snap, running a hand through my hair in frustration. "But whatever it is, it's serious. John basically told me to watch my back, that there are people who could come after me if I'm not careful." "Jesus," Adam mutters, shaking his head. "This is getting out of hand, man. What are you going to do?" I push off the door and start pacing, my mind racing. I can't just sit around and wait for something to happen. I need to know what the hell my father is up to. I need to know why Laura is involved in this. Adam watches me, his concern deepening. "But how are you going to find out? If your father's keeping secrets, he's not just going to hand them over to you." I stop pacing and look at Adam, a sudden resolve hardening in my chest. There's one person who might know something. Someone who could have been in on whatever my father's been hiding. Adam raises an eyebrow. "Who?" I hesitate for a moment, the idea feeling like a dangerous gamble, but I'm running out of options. "My mother." Adam blinks in surprise. "Your mom? But she's at the sanatorium. How would she know what's going on?" "My parents have always been close," I say, my mind racing through the possibilities. She might have overheard something, or maybe my father confided in her. If anyone knows the truth, It's her. But she's out of town for a while, right? Adam asks, doubt creeping into his voice. Are you thinking about driving up there? No, I reply, shaking my head. I don't want to tip her off. She might get defensive if she thinks I'm prying into their business. But I can talk to her on the phone, feel her out. See if she slips up or if there's something she knows that she hasn't told me. Adam nods slowly, considering the plan. It's worth a shot. But be careful, Mark. If what John said is true, you don't want to accidentally pull her into something dangerous. I know, I say, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. But I need answers, Adam. I can't just sit around and do nothing. Adam stands up and claps me on the shoulder, his expression resolute. Then let's get those answers. Call her and see what you can find out. I'll be right here if you need anything. I nod, grateful for his support, and pull out my phone. My hands are steady, but my heart is pounding as I dial my mother's number. The phone rings, each tone stretching out the silence until finally, she answers. Mark? Is everything all right? My mother's voice is warm, but there's a hint of concern in it, as if she senses something is off. Hey, Mom, I say, forcing a smile into my voice. Yeah, everything's fine. Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Oh, I'm doing well, she replies, her tone lightening. The sanatorium is lovely, and it's nice to have some time to relax. How are things with you and Laura? The mention of Laura sends a jolt of anger through me, but I push it down, trying to keep my tone casual. We're all right. Busy with work, you know how it is. I was actually thinking about Dad today. Have you talked to him recently? There's a brief pause on the other end of the line, and I can almost hear my mother thinking. I talked to him a few days ago, she says slowly. He seemed fine, just busy with his work. Why do you ask? Just wondering how he's doing, I say, trying to sound nonchalant. He's been acting a bit off lately, and I wanted to make sure everything's okay. My mother sighs, a hint of sadness creeping into her voice. Your father has always been a bit distant when it comes to work. He doesn't like to talk about it much, even with me. But I'm sure he's fine, Mark. He's been through worse. Worse? I ask, latching onto the word. What do you mean? She hesitates again, as if weighing whether to say more. There were some difficult times a few years ago. He never told me the details, but I could tell something was wrong. He was more stressed than usual, more secretive. But he got through it, and things seemed to go back to normal. My mind races, trying to connect the dots. Do you think it's happening again? That he's dealing with something big? I don't know, she admits, her voice tinged with worry. He's been quieter lately, more withdrawn. But he's always been good at handling things on his own. He doesn't like to burden us with his problems. Mom, if there's anything you know, anything at all, please tell me, I urge, the desperation creeping into my voice. I just want to help him. And make sure Laura and I are safe. There's a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I think she might hang up. But then she speaks, her voice soft and uncertain. There is something, Mark. Something he told me a while back, but I didn't think much of it at the time. What is it? I ask, my heart pounding in my chest. He mentioned a name, Elijah. I don't know who that is, but your father seemed worried whenever he brought it up. He said Elijah was someone he had to deal with, but he never explained why. I just thought it was business, but now... Elijah? I repeat, the name unfamiliar but ominous. Did he say anything else about him? No, just that he was a difficult man. Someone who could be dangerous if crossed. I asked your father if he was in trouble, but he assured me everything was under control. The name hangs in the air between us, heavy with implication. Thanks, Mom, I say, my mind already racing with possibilities. I appreciate you telling me this. Mark, please be careful, she says, her voice trembling slightly. Whatever your father is involved in, I'm sure he's doing it to protect us. But if it's something dangerous? I will, Mom, I promise, though I'm not sure how I'm going to keep it. I'll call you soon. We say our goodbyes, and I hang up, my mind spinning with the new information. Elijah. A name, a shadow in my father's life that I've never heard of before. But now, it's my only lead. Adam is watching me closely as I sit back down on the couch, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. What did she say? I relay the conversation to him, watching his face change as he processes the information. Elijah, he repeats, frowning. Doesn't ring a bell. But if your mom is right, this guy could be trouble. Exactly, I say, my mind working overtime. John said my father was involved in something risky. If this Elijah guy is part of it, then we need to find out who he is, and what the hell he's got my father and Laura into. Adam nods, but there's a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But how do we do that? It's not like we can just look him up in the phone book. No, but there are other ways, I say, the gears in my mind turning. My father has connections, and I'm sure he's kept records. Business cards, notes, something that could point us in the right direction. I need to get back into my parents' house. There has to be something there that can tell me more. Adam looks uneasy at the idea. Breaking into your own parents' house? That's risky, Mark. What if your dad finds out? I don't care, I say, my voice hardening. I need to know what's going on. And I'm not waiting around for another surprise. Are you with me? Adam hesitates, then nods, his expression resigned. Yeah, man. I'm with you. Let's figure this out. With Adam by my side, I feel a flicker of determination. I don't know who Elijah is or what my father has done, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, I'll make sure that Laura, my father, and anyone else involved pays for what they've done. Because now, it's not just about betrayal. It's about survival. The next morning, Adam and I sit in his car outside my parents' house. The dawn light casts a grey hue over the neighborhood, the kind of stillness that makes the air feel heavy with anticipation. My heart pounds in my chest as I survey the familiar home, my childhood home, now a fortress of secrets I'm determined to breach. We have to be quick, I tell Adam, my eye scanning the driveway for any sign of my father. His car isn't there, which means we should be safe, but I can't shake the tension twisting in my gut. Adam nods, gripping the steering wheel. Are you sure about this, Mark? Once we do this, there's no going back. There's nothing to go back to, I say, the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. Not after what I've seen. He doesn't argue further, and we step out of the car. The early morning chill bites at my skin as we approach the front door. I pull out the spare key my mother gave me before she left for the sanatorium, my hand trembling slightly as I insert it into the lock. The door swings open with a soft creak, and I pause, listening for any sound inside. But the house is silent, save for the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of a clock in the living room. We step inside, and I lead Adam toward my father's study, a room that was always off limits when I was a kid, and even more so as an adult. The door is closed, as usual. I hesitate before opening it, my breath catching in my throat. This is it, I whisper, as much to myself as to Adam. Let's do this, he replies, his voice steady. I push the door open, and we step into the study. The room is immaculate, as always, dark wood furniture polished to a shine, bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, and a large desk in the center, perfectly organized. But it's what's on the desk that catches my eye. A laptop, my father's. And next to it, a small stack of papers, neatly arranged. I walk over to the desk, my hands cold as I reach for the papers. Adam watches silently as I sift through them, finding nothing but business reports, legal documents, and a few handwritten notes, nothing out of the ordinary. Frustration gnaws at me, but I don't give up. I pull open the drawers, one by one, searching for anything that might shed light on this mysterious Elijah. Mark, Adam says suddenly, his voice tense. He's standing by a small filing cabinet, one of the drawers partially open. I walk over, and he pulls out a thick folder, the name Elijah scrawled across the top in my father's handwriting. My heart skips a beat. "This is it," I whisper, barely able to contain the mix of fear and anticipation. We set the folder on the desk and open it. Inside are pages upon pages of documents, financial records, contracts, and detailed notes. But it's the photographs that make my blood run cold. Laura, my wife, standing beside a man I've never seen before. He's tall, with dark hair and a cruel smile that sends a shiver down my spine. The photos show them together in various locations, hotels, restaurants, even what looks like a private estate. In each one, Laura is smiling, her body language intimate and familiar with this stranger. I flip through the documents, my eyes scanning the names and dates. It becomes clear that this Elijah is not just a business associate, he's something far more dangerous. The contracts detail illegal activities, money laundering, and threats disguised as business transactions. And Laura, she's listed as a key player in all of it. She's been involved with him the whole time, I mutter, my voice hollow. All those late nights, all those texts, it wasn't just an affair. She's been helping him. Adam leans in, his brow furrowed as he reads over my shoulder. "Mark, look at this." He points to a section of one document where my father's name appears repeatedly. I read the paragraph aloud, my voice shaking. "Your father, he's been laundering money through his company for years. And Laura, she's been the one making the connections, setting up the meetings with Elijah." The realization hits me like a punch to the gut. My father isn't just a victim in all this, he's complicit. He's been using his company to funnel money into Elijah's operations, and Laura has been his partner in crime. "She never loved me," I whisper, the truth sinking in. "It was all a lie. She married me to get close to my father, to use our family's resources for this operation." Adam places a hand on my shoulder, but I shrug it off, anger and betrayal boiling over. How could they do this? How could they use me like this? "Mark," Adam says cautiously, "there's more." He flips to the back of the folder, where a single sheet of paper is tucked away. It's a letter, written in my father's handwriting. My hands tremble as I read it. "Mark, if you're reading this, then things have gone too far. I never wanted you to be involved in this mess, but Laura, she's dangerous, more dangerous than you can imagine. She and Elijah have been planning something big, something that could destroy us all. I've tried to protect you, but I fear it's too late. They're watching us, Mark. You need to get out, before they come for you too. I'm sorry." The letter falls from my hands, fluttering to the floor. "He knew," I say, my voice barely above a whisper. "He knew what they were doing. And he tried to protect me. But he's in too deep," Adam says, picking up the letter. "And so is Laura. If what your father says is true, they're planning something big. We need to get out of here and figure out what to do next." I nod, numb with shock, but a steely resolve hardens within me. "I need to confront her," I say, the words forming a plan in my mind. "She's been playing me from the start, but she won't get away with it." Adam looks at me, concern etched into his features. "Mark, confronting her could be dangerous. If she's really as involved as your father says, she might not hesitate to." "I don't care," I interrupt, my voice cold and final. "She's ruined my life. She's ruined my family. I won't let her get away with it." Adam sighs, but he knows there's no talking me out of it. "All right. But I'm coming with you. You're not facing her alone." We leave the study, the folder clutched in my hand like a lifeline. As we drive back to my house, my mind races with what I'll say to Laura, how I'll confront her with the evidence, how I'll finally force her to admit the truth. When we arrive, the house is quiet, eerily so. I push open the front door and step inside, Adam close behind me. I can hear movement in the kitchen, Laura probably making herself a cup of coffee, completely unaware that her world is about to come crashing down. I walk into the kitchen, the folder held tightly in my hand. Laura looks up as I enter, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. "Mark, you're back early. I didn't expect you until." "Save it," I snap, throwing the folder onto the kitchen island. The papers spill out, the photos sliding across the smooth surface. "I know everything, Laura. About you, about Elijah, about the money." For a moment, she stands frozen, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. But then, slowly, her expression changes. The shock fades, replaced by a cold, calculating look that sends a chill down my spine. "So, you finally figured it out," she says, her voice low and devoid of emotion. "Took you long enough." The admission stuns me, but only for a moment. "How could you do this?" I demand, my voice trembling with rage. "How could you use me like this? Did you ever love me at all?" Laura's lips curl into a cruel smile. "Love? Don't be naive, Mark. This was never about love. It was about power, about control. You were just a means to an end." The words cut deeper than any knife. "And my father?" I ask, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Was he just a pawn too?" "Your father was useful," she says with a shrug. "He provided the resources we needed, the connections. But he started getting cold feet, so we had to convince him to stay in line." "You're a monster," I whisper, the reality of her betrayal crashing over me. "No, Mark," she replies, her eyes gleaming with something dark and dangerous. "I'm a survivor. And now that you know the truth, you're in way over your head. You should have stayed ignorant, Mark. It would have been safer for you." I take a step back, realizing just how dangerous she really is. "What are you planning?" I ask, desperation creeping into my voice. Laura's smile widens, a terrifying sight. "You're too late to stop it. Elijah is already in motion, and soon, your father's company, and everything you've ever known, will be gone. And as for you, well, you won't live to see it." Before I can react, Laura reaches into her pocket and pulls out a small handgun, pointing it directly at me. My heart stops, fear gripping me like a vice. Adam steps forward, his hands raised. "Laura, don't do this. We can talk about it. Just put the gun down." But Laura's gaze remains fixed on me, her finger tightening on the trigger. "Goodbye, Mark." Time seems to slow as the gunshot rings out, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. I flinch, expecting the searing pain of a bullet, but instead, I hear a thud behind me. I turn, my breath catching in my throat. Adam lies on the floor, blood pooling around him, his eyes wide in shock and pain. "No!" I scream, dropping to my knees beside him. "Adam, no!" He gasps, struggling to breathe, his hand clutching mine weakly. "Mark, run!" But I can't move, can't think. All I can do is watch as the life drains from my best friend's eyes, as the world around me shatters completely. Laura steps forward, the gun still in her hand. "You should have listened to him, Mark." But before she can pull the trigger again, the sound of sirens blares outside, blue and red lights flashing through the kitchen windows. Someone must have heard the shot and called the police. Laura's eyes narrow, and she takes a step back, the cold calculation in her gaze replaced by frustration. "This isn't over," she hisses, then turns and bolts out the back door. I'm left kneeling beside Adam's lifeless body, the sound of the sirens growing louder as the police arrive. Everything is a blur, officers storming the house, paramedics rushing in, the chaotic noise blending together until it's all just white noise in my head. They take Laura into custody later that day, but it's too late. The damage is done. My life, my family, everything I thought I knew, is gone. My father's company collapses in the wake of the revelations, Elijah disappears into the shadows, and Laura, she's sentenced to life in prison, but the hatred between us festers like an open wound. In the end, we're left with nothing but the wreckage of our lives, the betrayal too deep to ever be forgiven. The love we once shared, if it ever existed, is replaced by a burning hatred that consumes us both. And as I walk away from the courtroom, from the life we built and destroyed together, I know one thing for certain: Laura and I will never cross paths again. Not because we've moved on, but because the hatred between us will never die.